Okay guys, firstly, Happy New Year to everybody. I hope 2016 is going to be a good year for everybody. Yeah, this week, what have I been doing? I've been off work. When did I break off for work? I broke off for work on Christmas Eve. Yeah, Christmas Eve. I was working yesterday for a wee while, but it's been really good. I've really enjoyed just kind of totally chilling out and just, having time just to do not very much. I've been doing a bit of reading, been taking the dogs some long W's. I'm going to be careful what I say because a pair of them are sitting in here just now. The weather has been bloody abysmal, but it's been good. My wife and daughter, they've both been off as well, so it's been good just having a bit of family time. So here we are, 2016. Blimey, how tall have you got? Where has the time gone? So what I thought, I was trying to come up with some sort of video game related stuff to talk about, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to kind of revisit some of the old stuff that I've probably talked about a million times in videos, but so anyway, to start off, what have I got here? How did I get interested in video games? I was actually listening to a podcast that me and a few mates from the sort of local computer club that we go to, we made a podcast for a couple of years. And I was actually out on a run today and I was listening to episode 1 and we were talking about how we got into video games, and I just thought it's quite an interesting sort of topic. I mean, it's something that obviously we've all got our reasons how we got involved in it. My reason being, well, how did I get involved in video games? I don't know what year it would be, probably, I would guess 1977, 1978. I was aware of video games. When I say video games, I mean the very, very first video game I ever saw, I think, would be Edinburgh Airport. And it wasn't even called Edinburgh Airport, it was called Turnhouse Airport. Anyone that's from this area will probably remember what I was talking about, unless you're not an old bugger like myself. But yeah, we used to, believe it or not, at the weekend, I mean, things were a lot simpler back in the 70s, and like a Friday night or a weekend treat, my mum and dad would say, do you want to go to the airport and we can watch planes land? Yeah, and that was our treat. We would actually drive, my dad would drive us to the airport and we would go up. There was a kind of vantage point that you could stand on and you could watch the planes land, and that's what we did. We used to go to Turnhouse Airport every now and again to watch planes land. That's how we rolled back in 1977 or whenever it was. There was no such thing as McDonald's or the multiplex cinemas and that kind of stuff. We had cinemas obviously, but yeah, that's what we did. And invariably we'd get like a bag of chips. Again, that was a big treat. Nowadays fast food is just something that kids completely take for granted. Kids get fast food all the time, but back in the 70s it was a big treat. So yeah, we would go to Turnhouse Airport to watch the planes land and we would get a bag of chips on the way back. And this one time I remember going to the airport with my sister Pamela and my mum and dad, and as we were making our way across the, up towards the vantage point, this sort of thing to the side, it was like glowing, there was like a glow coming from it, and as I got closer to it I realised that it was like what I could only describe as a TV, and on this TV there was like a bat and this kind of square ball getting moved up and down, and that's the first time I'd ever seen anything like that before. And and I noticed you could put money in it. My mum and dad quickly sort of chased me upstairs, go on, let's go, we want to watch the planes land. So that was it, that was my brief encounter with what I later found out was Pong. It probably wasn't the actual Pong. I mean, the proper Pong machines were kind of futuristic looking. This thing, I don't recall it being, particularly stand out, so it was probably some bootleg Pong that they had. But that was my very, very, very first sort of experience of seeing a video game. And then, I don't know timelines, I've no idea timeline wise, probably shortly after that I was through at my granny's house. My granny lived in Edinburgh, and she was one of these people. I mean, my granny passed away 2 years ago. In fact, I don't mean telling you this, my granny was 105 when she passed away, and believe it or not, I mean, that was my dad's mum. My dad passed away in January 2013. He was 78, and my granny, which was obviously my dad's mum, she actually outlived my dad. She passed away a month later. I think she just basically, when she heard that her son had died, she kind of gave up the will to live. But yeah, she was a remarkable person. She was a really, really brilliant granny. I mean, she used to spoil me and my two sisters something stupid. You know, she used to go to Blackpool on holiday, and you know, I used to go through to see her, and she always had hundreds, well not hundreds, she always had loads of toys. She was the person out of anybody in my family that really used to spoil me. So this one day, we used to go through to my granny's maybe once a fortnight. It might have been once a week, I really can't remember. But my dad used to drive, and we got through there, and she said to my granddad, "Look, right Jimmy, go through and show Alan what you've bought." And you know, I had no idea what I was going to kind of see. And my granddad disappeared, and then he appeared in the living room with this box, a Binatone. I had no idea what the hell it was. And inside was, I can only describe as a burnt orange, bright orange plastic box, which he plugged into the TV. And coming from his box were two little controllers, and on them you could just rotate, and that was all there was. There was no fire buttons. And it turns out that was it was a Binatone TV game, which had, what did it have? It had squash, it had tennis, it had football, and it had squash practice. I mean, they were real basic games. So we got to play this for a wee while that night, and of course I just thought this was the most incredible thing ever. So my granny said to me, would you like it? And I'm like, what? Oh, would you like to take it home? And of course I was like kind of brought up to be very polite, and I'm like, no, I can't do that, Granny, I can't do that. And my granddad says, go on, you take it. So they then let me take this Binatone TV game home, and I played it for quite a long time. The thing is, even back in, I don't know, I'm going to guess 1978, even back in 1978, I realised pretty quick that it was a very basic game, and playing, it was alright if you had somebody to play it with, but even playing two-player tennis or two-player squash or football, which were basically all the same game, albeit with more bats, they were very similar game. They did get boring very quickly, and playing these games yourself, you know, it wasn't long before I got fed up playing this thing. In fact, I mean, I mentioned in the podcast that I actually discovered that if I flicked the machine on and off really fast, sometimes it would go into this kind of strange kind of mode where it looked like, all I could describe it would be, it was like two vertical lines, and it was kind of moving, and it actually gave the impression it was like a driving, it was like a road, it looked like a driving game. And I remember I thought this was fantastic. This was like a driving game in my bedroom. But yeah, it wasn't long before I got fed up with the Binatone. My next, in between the Binatone TV game and before I got my first computer, it was the handhelds. I'm not going to talk too much about these. It was old LCD handhelds like Astro Wars and Galaxy Invader. I had numerous ones of these. These were basically what we had to play. This was before computers came out, and it was before any kind of home sort of video game system came out. Yeah, you had your Binatone TV games, which were pretty boring. So the only way we could play things like Space Invaders and Galaxian were using these LCD machines. I did actually collect quite a few of them. about last year, the year before I think it was. I started, I bought a couple, and before I know it, I was buying loads of them on eBay. I think I ended up getting about, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 of these things. Didn't pay that much money for them, but I realised pretty quick that they're pretty dull to play, It might have been cutting edge technology back in 1979, but playing them now, you can't play them for any more than a couple of minutes and you're pretty much bored stuff with them. So I went through a phase of LCD games, which they were alright, but they weren't like the proper machines. But then the next sort of landmark as far as being exposed to video games, obviously was living in central Scotland. I wasn't near to any sort of arcade. I wasn't near to like most of the arcades in the UK were in sort of like holiday resorts like Blackpool and Scarborough and Brighton and all these kind of places. There was no such thing like that in Scotland. I mean, maybe, I don't know, there might have been some, maybe up in, I don't know, Aberdeen, whatever, but where I was, there was no arcades as such. So the only exposure I got to video games, actual arcade games, were in like your local chip shop, or in my case, it tended to be the sports centre. There was a big sports centre opened up in the sort of mid-70s in Livingston, and it was one of these places that everybody congregated to. The 70s was a big time for kind of fitness and that kind of stuff, and so I used to go up there with my dad, and I used to play squash, and I used to go to, what did I used to do? I used to do judo. I think I took up judo for about 6 months and got bored that I was rubbish at it, so I kind of gave that in. But the big thing for me at the sports centre was this big machine appeared, which turned out to be Space Invaders. And to see one of these games for the first time, you just knew that this was something. It was like brand new, everything, everything was new about it. You knew that this was going to change the future. Well, not literally change the future, but it was going to change how you viewed entertainment. And of course this Space Invaders machine, it was constantly hogged with people. You would put your 10 pence down waiting on your shot, and you would have to wait, and invariably I would last maybe about a minute. I was rubbish at, I'm still not very good at video games, but I was 10 times worse back as a sort of 10-year-old. And but this, to me, this was just like the greatest thing ever. As a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, whatever I was, I can't remember exactly. It was just like the most magical thing ever. You're sold your granny, and even my granny, who I love to bits, I'd have probably sold her if somebody was going to buy me a Space Invaders machine, but that was never going to happen. So yeah, it was playing machines in the sports centre. That's where I got my next kind of major exposure to video games. But then the third biggest sort of landmark thing was, and again this is a story that I've told a few times, so apologies if you've heard this story before, but I have noticed one thing about getting older is you tend to repeat yourself, and I'm certainly doing that more. So yeah, apologies in advance. But I had a mate, we just started, I think it was the last year of primary school, that would be 1979, so I would be 12, that's probably right actually. I had this mate, his dad worked in oil rigs, so he never really saw his dad. His mum quite literally used to put, summer holidays at the weekends, she quite literally used to put him out the house, give him £5, which was a lot of money, whatever, and he was basically left to fend for himself. I used to kind of feel sorry for him because he didn't have much of a family life. His mum was too busy going to bingo and that kind of stuff, and his dad wasn't there because he was in the oil rigs. But one sort of silver lining about being sort of fairly neglected as a child, I guess, is for his birthday or his Christmas, I can't remember, it might have just been something that he got. He told me that he had this machine called an Atari, and it had Pac-Man on it. And I think at that point I'd seen the Atari VCS, as we called it in the UK, advertised on TV. Again, it was something that I always wanted, and I knew my mum and dad just simply weren't going to buy me it. they didn't have the money, and it's, you know, my mum and dad wouldn't spend £100 on me, which was fair enough because they didn't have the money. But anyway, my mate turned up at my house one day with this box, this Atari box, and he proceeded to set it up, and we switched it on, and the first game that we played was Combat, which was a kind of compilation of did you have one player games? I can't remember if you play one player in Combat. You might have actually, but you had like the most fun was had with sort of two players, you know, one player versus player two. You had biplanes, you had tanks, you had jets, I think it was. They were all basically the same game, but you could kind of tweak them. You could make them faster or slower, and fast bullets, slow bullets. Movement could be tweaked. You could even make it invisible so that you couldn't even see your ship. So this was Combat, so we played that for a bit. But the other game that she had, the actual kind of box, I think Combat came in the machine. The one that you had the box for was Pac-Man. Yeah, you know, Pac-Man had... When did Pac-Man come out? Yeah, I mean, Pac-Man, I don't know when Pac-Man came out, but anyway, it was almost after Pac-Man came out. This particular version, it's always been pretty universally panned as being absolutely garbage. But you know what, it was a game that, it was one of my first kind of home video games I ever played, and I loved it to bits. And I do think it's got a lot of unfair criticism. You know, yeah, it might not have the same sound effects, and maps might look different. The dots aren't dots, are actually squares. Pac-Man can only ever face left or right. Even when he's moving up and down, he always looks to the side. I'm looking up there actually, I've got Pac-Man. Yeah, I'm not even going to bother showing the box. You've all seen Pac-Man in the Atari VCS. So yeah, loved that to bits. So that was it. I knew I wanted an Atari VCS, but like I said, my mum and dad, I mean, they both worked, but they were quite, I wouldn't say they were stingy with their money, but they certainly didn't spoil us the same way as I spoil my daughter. I mean, things have changed a lot, but there was no way that I was ever going to get one. I used to kind of drop massive hints about getting one, but I knew I wasn't going to get one, and you know, I was never surprised with one sort of thing. But when I got, I'm trying to think when it would be, a few years later, or maybe 1-2 years later, I think it was, the computer scene kind of burst into the UK. Instead of like just having consoles, you could actually get these things called computers. Now my first exposure to a home computer would be at high school, and it was our modern studies teacher. He had a ZX81, and he used to get shots each, and I think the game was, it used to flash up a word for a couple of seconds, and you then had to type the word in. That was the game. But at that point, my interest was firmly piqued. I knew I had to get a computer. So probably, I don't know, the next birthday, computers were getting pretty commonplace, and my mum and dad agreed to buy my computer. Now I wanted an Atari, I wanted a Commodore 64, but I knew there was no way I was going to get one. These were like £300-400 back then. So I plumped for the Spectrum. I thought, can I get a Spectrum? So mum and dad disappeared into Edinburgh one day to a shop called Comet, which no longer exists, and they came back with this computer, and I was so excited to get this thing. And the computer they bought me wasn't a Spectrum, it was a Texas T1994A, which turned out to be pretty pants. The actual computer itself, I think, looking at it now, it actually wasn't a bad computer, but it was the complete lack of software. I had one game which was written in BASIC, which I bought, and it was absolutely pish. It was called Core, and you basically controlled, using the keys, you controlled this, the idea was to send a missile down through the earth to reach this bomb at the bottom to explode it, so it didn't, you know, to save the earth. But your ship was the letter V. You controlled it using, I don't know what it would be, Q and W or something, I can't remember exactly. But so you controlled, your ship was the letter V. You had to steer this bomb through flocks of like killer seagulls or killer birds, whatever. Now the killer birds were actually W's on the screen, so it was like V and W's, and it didn't scroll, it just sort of went bonk, bonk. It kind of, is it character scrolling I think they call it. It was as jerky as they come. And then when you reached the bottom, I think the bomb was like I don't know what that was, a letter Z or something, but it was absolutely awful. And then I then got exposed to other people's computers, like the Commodore 64 Spectrum, and at that point I thought I have got to get something else. So I got a part-time job, and I bought a Commodore 64 on hire purchase. I think it was, I don't know, 150, 200 quid it cost me. It was something like, I'm sure it was £12 a week that I used to, was it a week? No, it'd be £12 a month. I didn't earn that much money. I used to work part-time from school, so I had to pay off this computer. So the first computer I got, I actually bought myself. It was a Commodore 64, and ever since then, that's it. I've just had the bug. My love of video games has never kind of slowed down. That would be, when would that be? 1983 I think it was, I got my Commodore 64, so that would be how many years ago? I don't know how many years ago, 33, is it? 33 years? Aye, yeah, it'd be 33 years that I've been into computers. Older than a lot of people probably watching this video. But that was it. That was where I got the bug. Okay, favourite system. Again, if you've been watching this channel for any length of time, you probably know that my favourite system is probably going to be the Commodore 64. You know, it's like most people, I'm sure their favourite, your own favourite system was the first system that you really got, because it's got the memories. I mean, I've got a silly amount of machines now. I've got, you know, all the Ataris, Spectrums, BBC, Amigas, you name it. But I wouldn't say the C64 is the best system. I would never ever say that. It's the one that I've got the most nostalgic, happy memories tied to. You know, it was 1983, I would be 16 years old, wasn't working, you know, it was, I was still at school. Back then you had no ties, you had no responsibilities, you know, you lived with your parents, you know, you got your dinners made for you, you didn't have any money worries. The only concern you had was trying to get a girlfriend and where you were going to get the money to buy your next computer game. But aye, there's, you know, the funny thing is, as much as it's my favourite system, I don't actually play it that much now. I mean, I used to probably class myself as an out and out, you know, classic retro gamer, but in the last probably, I don't know, in the last couple of years, I mean, I've been playing more kind of recent games. I mean, as much as I love my retro systems, you know, there's some fantastic games that have never aged. There are also a lot of real dire games. I mean, I hate to say it, but some of the games that bring back the fondest memories, dare I say, like Bruce Lee, when I play them now, yeah, they're fun to play, but you don't have the same magic attachment to them that you had when they first came out. You know, there's, if you were to say to me, you can pick either a Commodore 64 with all the games, or I don't know, an Xbox 360 with all the games. Every game that was ever released on the Xbox 360 and every game ever released on the Commodore 64, what one would you choose? And you can't go back, you can only ever have one system. Ask me a year ago, I'd have probably gone automatically for the C64. Now, I'm not quite so sure. These old games, fantastic, you know, there are some still brilliant games that haven't really aged at all, they still play really well. I mean, one of my favourite games is Pipeline, Super Pipeline, you've got Super Pipeline 2. Games like that are still absolutely magic to play. When I play them now, I get just as much enjoyment out of them as I did when I played them back in, you know, the 80s. But I would say that the games that I would, you know, Commodore 64 games that I would play now, there's very, very little that hold my interest for any more than probably a few minutes. And I know that's probably quite a thing to say for like a retro person like myself, but you know, you've got to look upon where things are now. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of tosh out there for new systems as well, but I'm still always going to be a retro man first and foremost. I mean, I've actually said this quite a few times. I probably don't play that many old systems. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've got my Commodore Amiga, which I love to bits. I do play that a lot. There's games in that you know, they've kind of moved on a bit from obviously 8-bit machines, but you know, I love my Amiga. I think I enjoy the history side of this hobby rather than actually physically playing them. You know, I think I enjoy, you know, reading. I mean, I love reading old magazines, reminiscing about games and whatever, rather than actually playing them. So yeah, it's probably that's probably where I am. I think I've got more an interest in the whole history side of it. You know, where the whole thing began, where it kind of grew from. Games, publishers. That's why I enjoy making these videos, playing old systems. It's not so much the playing the games, it's just I love wallowing in the whole history of this hobby of ours. I'm going to stop talking about old systems and what have you in history. Why did I start making YouTube videos? How did I get involved with this whole thing? I was actually looking back at my first sort of Mamemeister video. It was 9th of December 2013 was when I put out my first sort of channel video. I did have a YouTube channel for a few years with just different bits and pieces, but it wasn't anything to do with games. But 9th of December 2013, I can remember there's a thread on one of the forums that I'm on, and people were talking about what games they were playing, and they were playing this and they were playing that. And I remember posting saying, I've kinda lost my gaming mojo. I don't know why, there was nothing at all that was really interesting me in games at all. And then this idea came to me. I thought, why don't I start playing some games and making videos? So I came up with this idea. I called it the Mamemeister 10-minute mashup, and the idea of it being I was going to play what I deemed to be a pish game for 10 minutes, and that was it. That was the whole idea of the thing. I was basically googling games that were known to be crap, and I was playing them for 10 minutes. So that's how it started. I mean, I've actually put a link to my very first video below. I'm certainly not I mean, the standard video that I put out is pretty pish, it has to be said, but what's interesting, if you actually take a few minutes to watch even the first couple of minutes of the video below, what's quite amazing is you know, and anybody that makes videos will kind of understand this. It's quite difficult when you first start doing these things. I mean, what I'm doing right now, it's quite difficult. Certainly in the early days, you're basically talking. You're talking to an empty audience. I mean, there's nobody. Yeah, you're watching this now, but as I'm recording this, I'm just literally talking into a camera. And it's amazing just how over like the last 24 months, how it's kind of evolved a wee bit. I mean, I'm certainly more confident when I'm talking on camera now. But I think the difference, I think if somebody was to say to me, why do you, what's changed? I think for me is, in the early days, you know, when you're making these videos, there was no, you didn't have any feedback or anything at all from anybody. So you're basically talking to an empty room. Whereas now, I do have, you know, I've got a few people that watch these videos kind of on a regular basis. You comment on them, which I always appreciate. I kind of feel I'm talking to you rather than talking to just anybody. Does that make sense? So I think, yeah, over a period of time, when you start to kind of get a wee bit of a community, you know, you get a few subscribers, you get a few regulars, passing comments, you know, watching your videos, then your confidence grows and you feel like you're talking to somebody rather than talking to an empty wall or an empty room, whatever it is. So yeah, that's where it started. It started in 9th of December 2013. So that's been 2 years. I couldn't actually remember how long I'd been going. I couldn't remember if it was 2 or 3 years. So what was before I start gibbering on? Yeah. So it's been going 2 years now, guys. I'm up to, I think it's about 471 subscribers. I'm delighted with that. I mean, it's the hardest for anybody that's going to start a channel, you know, whether it's about video games or anything else. If you're watching this, and I'm guessing it's because you're interested in video games, if you are going to think about starting your own channel, you've got to talk about something you're interested in. Don't talk about something that you think people are going to want to see, because that'll come over in your videos. You've got to be, I would say, genuinely passionate about what you're actually talking about, because if you're not, people will pick that up. And it's, starting off a channel is one of the hardest things you'll do. I mean, I remember, I'm trying to think, I was up to, I don't know, I think I'd got up to about maybe 10 subscribers, and the views that I was getting on videos was ridiculous. It was something like maybe 3 or 4 views, and I remember making some videos, and you know, you'd left it up for a day and you were getting maybe 3 or 4 people watching it, and it just kind of hit me. I thought, why am I doing this? What is the point of me sitting talking to a camera, playing video games, making videos? Well, it was quite clear that nobody was interested in watching them. So I put out a video just you know, thanking those few people that had supported me in these, I don't know what it was, few months, but telling them that I was going to knock it on the head. I just felt it was a wasted time, you know, talking to myself. That's effectively what I was doing. And what was amazing was these few people that were watching them, they all expressed their disappointment and sort of sadness that I was going to knock the channel on the head. And you know what, just getting that feedback from these few people was enough to keep me going with it. And I'm glad I have, because yeah, over 2 years, I mean, it is, like I said, it's the hardest thing to get a couple of subscribers, because you're not known at all. People don't know you, and when you've only got a few people watching your videos, unless people physically find you, you know, by googling them, it's hard to start getting views. But that kind of builds up, and I do think the more people you have, the easier it is to kind of build up subscriber levels. You should never make videos just to get subscribers. You know, it's all about getting people to watch them. But here I am, 2 years on, just under, well, 30 under 500 What's interesting, I was watching Steve Benway now. It was only something like 5 years ago. Steve Benway only had 500 subscribers, and now he's on like 13,000. So, you know, Steve makes excellent videos. He certainly doesn't make as many now because he's studying. But it's incredible just how quickly, you know, the more you get, if that makes any sense. Or the more you have, I should say, the quicker you gather new people. But like I said, you should never really do it. It shouldn't be about getting subscribers or views. It's about something you need to be able to enjoy doing. And if you're enjoying making videos, then people are going to pick up on that, you know. So, 2 years. The time has flown in. I've had my ups and downs with the channel. Yeah, there's been times where, you know, through having a job and having whatever, you know, family responsibilities and other things come along. There's been times, there's been wee dips where I've kind of thought about, maybe I should knock it in the head, but then quickly I realised, no, I do enjoy it. But it's one of these things, it's like it flows and ebbs, it goes up and down, you know. One day you'll go on and you've picked up 2 subscribers, and then the next day you go on and you've lost 3. That's just the way it works, you know, and you shouldn't get kind of too hung up on it. But I'm still going to continue with this channel. I do enjoy it. I may get to a stage where, you know, I realise I've not got the time, whatever, other things come along. I mean, one of my ambitions, in fact, I'm going to kind of move on from talking about YouTube. New Year's resolution. I'm not really one of these people that tends to make resolutions. Looking back at 2015, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I don't think it's been a particularly good year. Not so much for me personally. Job wise, nothing's really changed. I'm still working, but I've not got a full-time job, so that's a bit rubbish. There's been a couple of my mates. I'm not going to go into details. A couple of my mates have had real shitty things happen to them, and for that reason it's not been a good year. Obviously you've got all the world crisis with ISIS and what have you, and there's been a lot of real negative stuff going on in the world at the moment. You know, if I could wave a magic wand and bring peace to the world, then I would absolutely do that. But 2015, it hasn't been a particularly good year for a lot of people, and hopefully 2016 will be better. Next year, have I got any, like I said, I'm not really one for resolutions. I would like to get another job. You've probably seen, picked up on how this job is going. I do enjoy the work. The company themselves aren't the greatest, so I would really like to get another job. They're hard to come by, but I do know that, you know, once we're into the new year, companies will start recruiting again. So that's my sort of my key thing, to get another job. Channel wise, going to keep doing what I'm doing, you know, keep trying to come up with new ideas and keep you guys interested in watching. Running wise, again, last year, or this year I should say, no, last year was pretty pish on the running front. Because of the job, I wasn't running as much as I should have, and unfortunately when I went in for a couple of the big races that I do, I was found out and I didn't complete them. So that was quite disappointing for me. So this year I'm back into my running again. It's been tough with the weather. The weather's been bloody awful, but I really want to get back into my running and hopefully get some decent results. I've got a few big races coming up, so that's that. Something I was thinking about, was it yesterday? I think it was. I'm trying to think. I can't think why. In fact, you know what it was? It was watching the news and seeing all these poor people, especially in North England, with the flooding. You know, there's been the weather this year in particular has just been bloody horrific. The amount of rain and flooding, and people getting washed out of their houses, and it just kind of got me thinking about I mean, where we stay, the chances of getting flooded are virtually next to zero. But it kind of got me thinking, what would happen? How would I cope if my house flooded and I lost everything? Now, most people, including myself, would say, well, you can replace things, you know, you can replace a three-piece suite, you can replace a bed, you can replace a TV. What I couldn't replace, in fact, I wouldn't even know what I've got as my collection, my kind of video game collection. I mean, I have got a stupid amount of stuff up in that loft. Stuff that I'm never likely to actually ever use. I've got quite a few double machines. Why I have them, I have no idea. But it kind of got me thinking, why have I got them? There's really no benefit to having all this stuff up in the loft. I mean, I've got boxes and boxes of games which I'm never ever going to play, and that is just stupid having them. So I think this year I am going to have a big clear out. I'm going to start getting rid of stuff. Hang on a second, bring the dog in. Right, hurry up. I'm going to have a serious clear out of stuff because there's just simply no point in having it. You know, if, like I said, if the worst happened, the roof blew off my house or something, all that stuff would be gone. It would just be wasted. So I'm seriously thinking about downsizing my collection. I mean, the stuff that I've got in this wee room I love to bits. But if I want to buy something else, I can go and buy it. There's nothing to be gained having. I mean, I've got 2 Amiga 1200s. I think I've got about 3 or 4 Mega Drives. I've got God knows how many Spectrums. I've got about 3 Commodore 64s. I've got various Atari machines sitting up in the loft doing absolutely nothing. So I really want to seriously consider downsizing my collection. There's nothing to be gained having these machines sitting in a loft, gathering dust effectively. So that is that. That's kind of where I want to go in my collection. Aye, that is it, guys. It's been a bit of a sort of a wandering waffle, nothing in particular to talk about, but I know I keep saying it, guys, but I just really want to finish off this video wishing each and every one of you, whether you're a subscriber, whether you're just watching my channel for the first time, I want to wish you all the very, very best for this year. I seriously hope that things in the Middle East, etc., improve and that things might be better. I'm not I'm not convinced that's going to happen, but I really hope that whatever that a new year is always a good time to look at where you've gone. Some people say if you're thinking about doing something, look back. If you've been wanting to do something and you look back 2 years and you haven't done it in these 2 years, then it's not something you're ever going to do. Does that make sense? But yeah, use the new year as a time to do things you want to do. As I've gotten older, I'm a great believer that we only get one crack at life, and it's important that you do what you want to do. As long as you're not hurting anybody, then there's so many people live their life and I want to do this, I want to do that, and then they simply never ever do it. So make the most of your life, guys. But I hope you all have. I wish you all the very, very best for 2016. Thank you so much for sticking with me. I know I've said this before, and a few people say no, not at all. I sometimes think that I don't try too hard with the channel, but there are times where I've made a video and I watch it back and I'm not happy with how I've come across for whatever reason. I don't know, but what I want to say is I do really appreciate everybody that takes time to watch my videos, because there's so many other channels out there, most way better than mine's. But I certainly have a few people that have stuck with me through thick and thin. There's been a few people who've kind of dropped off the radar. I'm not quite sure. I hope. One guy, Jamie Williamson, he was always a big supporter of the channel. He always commented a lot. I know I think he started a new job, but I've not seen him post for quite a long time. So I hope if you're watching this, Jamie, let me know that you're okay, mate. I hope everything's okay. But to everybody that's supported me over these last 24 months, thank you very much. If you've not subscribed and you want to, then I really appreciate it. Please continue to post comments and ask questions, because it's all about being a community, and questions and answers and whatever it is, that all helps to keep this thing going. You know, the day that all these comments stop is probably the day that I would have to kind of revisit why I'm doing this and, you know, think about giving it up. But yeah, anyone that's supported me over these last couple of years, whether you're new to the channel or whether you've been following the channel for a long time, thank you very, very much. I really do. If it wasn't for you guys doing this, taking part and, you know, watching what I do, then I certainly wouldn't be continuing the channel. But anyway, I'm talking pish now, guys, so that is it. Thank you very much. All the best for 2016, and lastly, thank you very much for watching.